Emily, young and hopeful, stood on the threshold of the old house. Sunlight, weak and watery, filtered through dusty windows. Shadows clung to the corners. It was a grand old place with high ceilings and echoing corridors. She felt a prickle of anticipation, a hint of unease. The air inside was cold, still. Dust motes danced in the faint light. She wandered from room to room, her footsteps muffled on the thick carpets. The house felt heavy with unspoken stories. She shivered despite the summer heat. Emily unpacked boxes, her possessions a splash of color in the muted house. The rooms were large, airy, yet an unsettling stillness lingered. As dust settled, shadows lengthened, twisting familiar shapes into something unsettling. She closed the heavy curtains, shutting out the gathering darkness. That night, she slept soundly, lulled by the unfamiliar silence. The house held its breath, waiting. The silence, she would soon learn, was deceptive. For the house, she would discover, was far from empty. Days turned into weeks. Emily settled into a routine, finding solace in the quiet solitude. She explored the nearby village, its inhabitants welcoming her with curious smiles. The house, bathed in the warm glow of summer, seemed to lose some of its forbidding air. She spent her days tending the neglected garden, unearthing forgotten roses and fragrant herbs. Sunbeams danced on the dusty paths. Birdsong filled the air. For a while, she almost forgot the initial unease, the prickle of anticipation that had greeted her. The nights were quiet, save for the rustling of leaves against the window panes. She slept soundly, her dreams filled with images of blooming flowers and sun-drenched meadows. The house seemed content to let her be, its secrets safely locked away. But Emily was wrong. The peace was an illusion, a temporary reprieve. For the house, like all old houses, held its secrets close, and it was about to whisper them to Emily in the dead of night. The scratching began subtly, a faint, intermittent sound in the dead of night. At first, Emily dismissed it as mice scurrying within the walls, but the sound persisted, growing bolder, more insistent. It seemed to emanate from the attic, a space she had yet to explore. One night, unable to ignore the sound any longer, Emily climbed the creaking stairs to the attic. The air grew heavy, thick with dust and the scent of decay. Cobwebs hung like ghostly shrouds, obscuring the shapes of forgotten objects. A single shaft of moonlight pierced the gloom, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the stillness. The scratching continued, relentless, seeming to come from the far end of the attic. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. Fear, cold and clammy, tightened its grip. She hesitated, torn between the urge to flee and a strange compulsion to uncover the source of the unsettling sound. Taking a deep breath, she moved forward, her hand trembling as she reached for the oil lamp on a nearby shelf. The lamp sputtered to life, casting grotesque shadows that danced and twisted around her. The scratching led her to a large, ornate mirror, its surface clouded with dust and age. It was an imposing piece, its frame intricately carved with scenes of mythical creatures and entwined foliage. The wood was dark, almost black, and felt strangely cold beneath her fingertips. As she approached, lamp held high, the scratching ceased. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breathing. She ran a gloved hand over the dusty surface, revealing glimpses of her own reflection, distorted and eerie in the flickering lamplight. The mirror held a strange allure. It was as if it were watching her, its depths concealing something unknowable, something ancient and powerful. She felt drawn to it, compelled to uncover its secrets, yet a part of her, a primal instinct, screamed at her to turn away, to flee the attic and never return. Ignoring the voice of reason, she reached out and grasped the heavy frame. It was heavier than she expected, as if it were anchored to some unseen force. With a grunt of effort, she managed to shift the mirror, revealing a small wooden box tucked behind it. Section 5. A figure in the glass. The box was plain, unadorned, its lid slightly ajar. Curiosity overriding her fear, Emily knelt and carefully lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a silver locket, its surface tarnished with age. As she reached for it, a movement in the mirror caught her eye. Her breath hitched in her throat. In the depths of the glass, she saw a figure, a fleeting glimpse of a man's face, pale and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to burn with a cold, unearthly light. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the image was gone. leaving behind only the distorted reflection of the attic and her own terrified face. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She stumbled back, dropping the box with a clatter. The locket spilled out, landing on the dusty floorboards. The mirror seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, its surface rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Fear gave way to a strange curiosity. Who was the figure in the mirror, and what was the connection to the old house? Determined to find answers, Emily decided to seek out the local historian. He, she hoped, might hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the haunted mirror. Section 6. Secrets of the Past. The historian, a wizened old man named Mr. Hawthorne, listened intently as Emily recounted her chilling encounter. He lived in a small, cluttered cottage on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by books and ancient maps. His eyes, though faded with age, gleamed with a sharp intelligence. "The mirror," he murmured, stroking his white beard thoughtfully. "It has been spoken of in hushed whispers, passed down through generations. Legend has it that the house was once owned by a wealthy merchant, a man consumed by greed and vanity." He continued, his voice low and raspy. "He commissioned the mirror, believing it held mystical powers. He is said to have made a pact with dark forces, trading his soul for eternal wealth and beauty." Mr. Hawthorne paused, his gaze fixed on Emily's face. "They say his soul became trapped within the mirror, doomed to wander its depths for all eternity." He leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "And now it seems he seeks release." Section 7. Whispers from Beyond. That night, sleep eluded Emily. Mr. Hawthorne's words echoed in her mind, fueling her fear. She found herself drawn back to the attic, an irresistible pull urging her towards the haunted mirror. The house seemed to hold its breath, watching her, waiting. As she stood before the mirror, its surface seemed to shimmer and distort, as if something were trying to break through. Then she heard it. A voice, faint and ethereal, whispering her name. It seemed to emanate from the depths of the mirror, cold and filled with an ancient sorrow. Terror threatened to overwhelm her, but something kept her rooted to the spot. A strange mix of fear and a growing sense of pity for the trapped soul within the glass. The voice whispered again, this time a plea for help, for release from its prison. Emily's hand trembled as she reached out to the mirror. It felt icy cold to the touch, as if all warmth had been leached from it. Images flashed before her eyes. A grand ball, a beautiful woman with haunted eyes, a man consumed by rage and despair. Then, darkness. Shaking off the lingering chill, Emily knew what she had to do. She couldn't ignore the pleas for help, the palpable despair emanating from the mirror. But she also knew that she couldn't remain in the house, a prisoner to its haunted past. The next morning, armed with courage and a heavy heart, she returned to the attic, this time with a purpose. She carefully wrapped the mirror in a thick blanket, determined to remove it from the house, to find a way to break the curse that bound the trapped soul to its depths. She hired men from the village to help her carry the heavy mirror out of the house and load it onto a wagon. They grumbled and exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the oppressive atmosphere that clung to the ornate frame. Emily, however, was resolute. She wouldn't leave until the mirror and its secrets were gone. As the wagon rumbled away, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The house seemed to sigh, the oppressive weight that had hung over it lifting slightly. But she knew it wasn't over. Not entirely. The house, she felt certain, would never truly be free of its past. Emily decided to leave the house. She couldn't bear the thought of staying another night, not after the chilling encounters with the haunted mirror. Packing her belongings, she moved with a haste that betrayed her fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind through the eaves, sent shivers down her spine. She left the key with the village elder, a kindly woman with knowing eyes, and bade farewell to the house that had held such promise, only to reveal itself as a vessel of sorrow and despair. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes watched her, that the house, now silent and empty, was not truly alone. The village faded into the distance, and with each step, the oppressive weight of the house lifted further. But the memory of the haunted mirror, of the chilling whispers and the fleeting glimpses of a tormented soul, would forever remain etched in her mind. Emily knew with a certainty that shook her to her core that the house would forever bear the scars of its past. and she, forever marked by her encounter with the supernatural, would carry the echoes of its haunting within her. The house stood silent, its windows dark and empty. The garden, once vibrant with Emily's care, began to succumb to neglect. Vines, like grasping fingers, crept up the walls, reclaiming the space. The old house settled back into itself, its secrets once again hidden from prying eyes. But whispers of its past lingered. Villagers, their voices hushed, spoke of strange lights seen flickering in the windows, of disembodied whispers carried on the night wind. Children, their imaginations running wild, told tales of a beautiful lady trapped within a mirror, her sorrowful cries echoing through the empty halls. The house remained empty, shunned by those who had heard the tales. It stood on the edge of the village, a stark reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath a veneer of beauty and grandeur. The haunted mirror was gone, but its presence, its chilling legacy, continued to permeate the very fabric of the old house. And so it would remain, a silent sentinel guarding its secrets, waiting for the day when a new occupant, drawn by its allure or blinded by its beauty, would awaken the echoes of its haunted past. Years passed, seasons turned. The old house on the hill remained unchanged, a solitary figure against the ever-changing backdrop of time. Its windows, like vacant eyes, stared out blindly at the world, holding their secrets close. Dust gathered on the threshold, undisturbed by human footsteps. But the house was not forgotten. It loomed large in the collective memory of the village, a constant reminder of the unseen forces that could intrude upon the mundane, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. It stood as a silent sentinel, a warning to those who dared to tempt fate. One day, a stranger arrived at the village, drawn, he claimed, by the beauty of the old house on the hill. He dismissed the tales of hauntings as mere superstition, scoffing at the villagers' warnings. He saw only the house's potential, its faded grandeur, its promise of a fresh start. And so, with a careless disregard for the whispers that followed him, he unlocked the heavy oak door and stepped inside. The house welcomed him with a sigh, its silence broken at last. The echoes of the past stirred, awakened by the presence of a new occupant. The house, no longer empty, awaited its fate.